So transition, of course, like so many terms that are technical, comes from Latin. And trans means across, and sitio, you already have that from a Spanish word, means a place. So this is going from one place to another. Crossing over from one place to another is a transition. And often today we associate it with time, transitions in time. And even in astronomy we talk about the transit of a star, which is one of the earliest works that was done by the observatory in its founding way back under the Spanish period of the 1800s. They would tell the time into the 19th century, the 20th century. They would tell the time by the transit of a star over Manila. And that was a work which we've seen in the earlier presentation of the history of the observatory. Then as time went on and everything was destroyed in World War II, I can remember Father Reuter telling me that when he landed, which would be immediately after the war, probably the late 40s, maybe not so late, he said from the boat, from the dock in the North Harbor, you could look across and there was nothing standing. Everything was flat. So the city had been flattened, and of course the observatory had been flattened in its place down in Father Forest Street. So the idea was, what would we do next? And following the tradition, there's the magic word tradition, the handing over of why the observatory was serving in the first place, the idea was, all right, if we're going to start again, then we should do what we were doing in the beginning. Why were we doing in the beginning? Because there was a need. People scientifically did not understand the geophysical, if I can use that term, situation, the background, if you want, weather-wise, meteorological-wise, and eventually in the Earth itself, of the archipelago called the Philippines, which is on many equators. It's on the geographic equator. We're an equatorial country. I'm now in Davao, which is 5 degrees above the equator. So therefore, meteorologically, we're affected by things. Father Farah discovered that the typhoons were the same as hurricanes in the other hemisphere. We're also affected by the ring of fire. That's the plate theory, that the plates are coming together, they're squashing the Philippine plate, and we have volcanoes that come from that, plus earthquakes related to that. And speaking of earthquakes, we also have plenty of earthquakes. They're both volcanic and they're also tectonic. So that is, again, the geophysical area that we're dealing with. So they said, all right, let's take advantage of the fact that the country has unique geophysical phenomena that happen and affect lives and affect the livelihood of people. Let's study that from a scientific viewpoint so that people can appreciate that the preparedness for these transitions in weather, if you want, or in geophysical phenomenon can be better understood by science. They just don't have to sit back and wait for the disaster, which is the common term we use today, whether coming from a volcano, or coming from an earthquake, or coming from a storm, a meteorological event. They just don't have to sit back and just wait for it to happen and then try to clean up afterwards. We can try to get a handle on it, try to understand it better using our science. So with that in mind, they said, okay, the local government, understandably, the Republic of the Philippines has been founded. It's no longer a colony of Spain or a commonwealth of the United States. It's an independent republic. The republic wants to have its own weather bureau. The most obvious disaster or hazard, more properly in common parlance today, is a typhoon. They want to be able to study that themselves and predict for the country when a typhoon is coming, how strong it will be, etc. So that's fine. That's a government responsibility. It should be in the hands of the government. We will leave it and they will do it. But following our Jesuit tradition, we'll continue to do the work which will be on the frontiers. We'll go to areas that nobody is thinking about at the moment, and we'll go there because we think we'll find scientific ability to understand the things that come from those frontiers. And so we went into upper atmosphere studies, today called the ionosphere. We also continued the earthquake studies, which the earthquake was doing, the country was doing field books, but we would do it. There's so much that needs to be done because of the tectonics that are going on. So we went into what we call today the frontier works. We transitioned from traditional, obvious hazard studies, which were earthquakes and typhoons basically then, into areas that nobody else was doing, which would be, today we call it space physics or upper atmosphere physics if you want, which can also influence, we think, and it's the research, we don't know for sure, research to find out if it does in fact impact the meteorological situation and other possible situations. And then seismic work continued because it's something that needs to be understood in so many different fronts. So that was really the transition that took place after the restarting of the Manila Observatory after World War II. Okay.
Thank you very much, Father.
There you go. Okay. you.